It's already begun, and most people haven't realized it yet. The moment the blood moon eclipse passed, something subtle but powerful shifted beneath the surface of reality. It didn't shake the ground or light up the sky with obvious signs. Instead, it quietly adjusted the direction of thousands of lives all at once. If you're watching this right now, there's a strong chance that your timeline has already moved. The only question is whether you've noticed the signs. Because after a blood moon eclipse, things don't simply go back to normal. Eclipses are known for one thing above everything else. They close chapters and open new ones without asking for permission. They redirect energy, remove outdated paths, and quietly guide people toward a future that better matches who they're becoming. And this time, the shift has been especially noticeable. People everywhere are beginning to sense that something feels different. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just different. You might have woken up the day after the eclipse with a strange awareness, like the world feels slightly rearranged. The routines that once felt automatic may now feel heavier or unnecessary. Conversations that once excited you might suddenly feel draining. Or maybe the opposite happened. Maybe something inside you suddenly feels lighter, clearer, as if a fog that surrounded your life for months finally lifted. That feeling is not random. It's one of the first signs that your timeline has shifted. One of the most common signs people experience after a blood moon eclipse is sudden clarity. For months, maybe even years, certain questions may have been circling your mind. Decisions that felt impossible to make, relationships that felt confusing, goals that felt distant or uncertain. But after the eclipse, something inside you begins organizing those thoughts. You start seeing situations exactly as they are, instead of how you wished they were, and that clarity can feel surprising at first. Sometimes it shows up in simple moments. You might find yourself looking at a situation in your life and realizing almost instantly what needs to change. A relationship you once held on to might suddenly feel like it belongs to a past version of yourself. A job that once felt safe might now feel limiting. Or an idea you once doubted might now feel like the exact direction you're supposed to pursue. When clarity appears like this, it's often a sign that the eclipse removed a layer of illusion that had been clouding your judgment. It's not that the truth suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The truth was always there. The eclipse simply illuminated it. Another powerful sign of a timeline shift is a sudden change in emotional attachments. Things that once carried strong emotional weight may now feel strangely neutral. A memory that once made your chest tighten might no longer have the same power over you. A person whose opinion used to shape your mood might suddenly feel less important to your sense of self. This can feel confusing at first because we often expect emotional changes to happen slowly. But eclipses compress time. They accelerate processes that might normally take months or years. What you're feeling now could be the emotional equivalent of a long healing process finally reaching its conclusion. Some people describe this as emotional silence, not numbness and not detachment from life itself, but a quiet space inside where constant overthinking used to exist. The mind feels calmer. The urge to analyze every possibility fades. Situations that once triggered anxiety now feel manageable, almost as if your inner system has recalibrated overnight. When that happens, it's another sign that your timeline has shifted toward a more stable version of yourself. But not everyone experiences the shift through calmness. For some people, the aftermath of the blood moon brings an unexpected restlessness. You might feel an urge to change something in your life, even if you can't fully explain why. Old routines might suddenly feel uncomfortable. You might feel drawn toward new ideas, new environments, or new possibilities that didn't cross your mind before. This restlessness isn't a mistake. It's often the energy of a new timeline trying to move you forward. Think of it like a gentle push from the universe reminding you that the chapter you were in has already ended. The reason you feel uncomfortable staying in the same place is because your energy has already stepped onto the next page. Another sign that people are noticing right now is the sudden appearance of meaningful coincidences, conversations that lead to unexpected opportunities, messages from people you haven't heard from in years, ideas arriving at the exact moment you needed them. Situations that once seemed blocked suddenly begin opening in ways that feel strangely well-timed. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe for daily cosmic insights, astrology updates, and spiritual guidance, because the universe always has a message for you. When these patterns start appearing, it often means that the timeline you've stepped into is aligning your environment with your direction. Life begins arranging events in a way that supports the path you're moving toward. What once felt like resistance begins turning into momentum. But there's another sign that many people overlook, and it's one of the most powerful of all. After a timeline shift, you may begin seeing your past in a completely different light. Situations that once looked like failures start making sense. Opportunities that disappeared begin to look less like losses and more like protection. You might think back to a job you wanted desperately that never worked out, and suddenly realize how different your life would have been if it had happened. You might remember a relationship that ended unexpectedly and recognize that it prevented you from staying in a version of life that wasn't meant for your future self. When perspective changes like this, it's often because the eclipse has revealed the hidden direction behind events that once felt random. What you thought were setbacks may actually have been course corrections guiding you toward the timeline you're on now. And perhaps the most subtle sign of all is a growing sense of trust in the unfolding of your life. Not blind optimism, but a quiet confidence that things are moving in the right direction, even if you can't see the entire path yet. You stop feeling the need to control every outcome. You begin focusing more on how you respond to situations rather than trying to force them into a specific shape. This shift in mindset changes everything, because once you start trusting the process, your energy moves differently through the world. Decisions become clearer, opportunities become easier to recognize, and the future begins forming in ways that reflect the stability you've developed within yourself. Right now, thousands of people are experiencing these signs in their own unique ways. Some are noticing the calm that comes with emotional clarity. Others are feeling the push of new beginnings. Some are watching opportunities quietly return after long periods of waiting. And many are realizing that certain doors in their life were closed for reasons that only make sense now. The Blood Moon Eclipse didn't just mark a moment in the sky. It marked a turning point in the stories people are living, a moment where old timelines quietly dissolved and new ones began unfolding. And if you're noticing even one of these signs in your life right now, it may be the clearest indication that your path has already shifted. The most important thing to remember is that a timeline shift doesn't require you to rush or panic. You don't need to figure everything out immediately. In fact, the strongest thing you can do right now is simply observe the changes happening around you. Notice what feels aligned and what feels outdated. Pay attention to the ideas and opportunities that seem to appear naturally, because the timeline you've stepped into is already moving. The future connected to it is already forming through the choices, thoughts, and actions you take every day. So if something in your life feels different after the Blood Moon Eclipse, don't ignore that feeling. It might not be loud, it might not be dramatic, but it could be the quiet signal that your life has already started turning toward a new direction. And sometimes the biggest changes in life don't arrive with chaos or noise. Sometimes they arrive exactly like this, quietly, gently, and right on time. Take a moment to reflect on what you've been experiencing since the eclipse passed. Have you noticed a new sense of clarity, a shift in emotions, unexpected opportunities appearing out of nowhere? Or maybe a deep calm replacing the stress that used to dominate your thoughts? Whatever you've been feeling, it's worth paying attention to, because those subtle changes may be the first signs that your timeline has already moved into a new chapter. And if that's the case, then the next part of your journey is already beginning, right now. Tell me something honestly in the comments. Since the Blood Moon Eclipse, what is the biggest change you've noticed in your life or in your mindset? Sometimes the moment we speak our experience out loud is the moment we truly understand the direction our life is moving. Your timeline may have shifted, and the signs might already be all around you. Something else begins happening after a powerful eclipse that most people overlook at first. It's not an event you can point to or measure. It's more like a subtle shift in how life starts responding to you. And once you notice it, you realize that the world around you is no longer interacting with you the same way it did before. This is one of the clearest signs that your timeline has truly changed. After a blood moon eclipse, many people begin experiencing what feels like energetic sorting. Certain people suddenly move closer in your life, while others begin fading out of it. Sometimes it happens quietly. Conversations become less frequent. Shared interests begin dissolving. The emotional connection that once felt natural suddenly feels forced. At first, it can feel confusing or even disappointing. We often assume that when connections weaken, something must be wrong. But in many cases, after an eclipse, this shift isn't about conflict or failure. It's about alignment. When your timeline changes, the frequency of your life changes with it, and not everyone around you will naturally move in the same direction. Think about how many relationships in life are formed because two people were standing in the same chapter at the same time. You worked in the same place. You lived in the same environment. You were both navigating similar experiences. But when your life moves into a new phase, the energetic overlap that held that connection together may begin dissolving. That doesn't mean the relationship was meaningless. It simply means its role in your story may have reached its natural conclusion. Eclipses have a powerful way of revealing which connections are meant to grow with you and which ones were meant only for a particular chapter. After a timeline shift, you may find that certain people suddenly appear in your life with a level of understanding or perspective that feels refreshing. Conversations with them flow easily. Ideas expand. You feel encouraged rather than drained. These new connections often feel strangely familiar, almost as if you were meant to cross paths long before the moment it actually happened. And that's not a coincidence. When timelines shift, the people who belong in your next chapter begin entering the scene. Another thing people frequently notice after a blood moon eclipse is the sudden reappearance of unfinished themes from their past. Situations you thought were resolved may resurface in subtle ways. A person you haven't heard from in years may suddenly reach out. An old dream you abandoned might return to your thoughts with surprising clarity. When this happens, it's not the universe dragging you backward. It's offering closure or completion. Think of it like the final pages of a chapter being written before the book moves into the next part of the story. Anything that still holds emotional weight or unfinished meaning often comes back into view one last time so that it can finally be understood. Some people realize that an old conflict no longer carries the same emotional charge it once did. Others recognize that they've outgrown a dream they once believed defined their future. And sometimes the opposite happens. A goal you abandoned years ago suddenly feels alive again, but this time with a new level of maturity and understanding. That's the difference between revisiting something from your past and repeating it. A timeline shift doesn't trap you in old patterns. It allows you to see them from a higher perspective. Another subtle sign that many people report after a blood moon eclipse is a change in their relationship with time itself. Days might feel strangely fast, as if events are happening in quick succession. Situations that once moved slowly begin unfolding with surprising speed. Conversations lead to opportunities sooner than expected. Decisions that once took weeks of hesitation suddenly feel obvious. Events that seemed distant begin appearing much closer than you anticipated. This acceleration isn't chaos. It's alignment compressing time. When you're moving along a path that truly fits your energy, the resistance that once slowed things down begins disappearing. Life doesn't feel like a constant struggle to force progress anymore. Instead, things begin unfolding with a rhythm that feels natural. This doesn't mean every moment becomes easy or effortless. Challenges still appear, but even those challenges feel different. Instead of feeling like obstacles meant to stop you, they begin feeling like stepping stones that push you to grow. You may notice that when difficulties arise, solutions appear faster than they used to. People offer help at the right moment. Ideas arrive exactly when you need them. Situations that once would have created stress now become opportunities to learn something valuable. That's the difference between moving against your timeline and moving with it. And there's one more important shift many people experience after the eclipse passes. A deep realization that the future is not something you need to chase. For most of our lives, we're taught that success, happiness, and fulfillment exist somewhere ahead of us. Something we must constantly pursue, plan, and fight for. But after a major energetic shift, like the one created by a blood moon eclipse, many people begin feeling something unexpected. They start noticing that the future begins forming around them naturally when they focus on becoming the right version of themselves. Instead of forcing outcomes, they begin aligning their actions with their values. Instead of worrying about whether something will work out, they focus on whether it feels truthful to who they are becoming. And when that happens, something remarkable occurs. Life begins responding differently. Opportunities appear that match your mindset. People enter your life who reflect your values. Situations unfold that support the direction you're moving in. It doesn't feel like luck, it feels like alignment. That's the quiet magic of a timeline shift. It doesn't change the world around you overnight. It changes the relationship between your energy and the world you move through. And once that relationship changes, everything else begins adjusting with it. So, if you've been sensing subtle changes in your relationships, your opportunities, your perspective on the past, or even the pace of events in your life, take a moment to acknowledge that something meaningful may already be unfolding. The eclipse didn't just pass across the sky. It may have quietly redirected the story of your life.